You've been trying to control people by pushing them directly, and that is exactly why they keep resisting you. Every time you demand, they defend. Every moment you explain too much, they sense pressure. Whenever you chase compliance, they protect their ego more than your logic. That ends today. Machiavelli understood a brutal social truth. Human beings do not just want outcomes. They want authorship. They want to feel that the move was theirs, the decision was theirs, the timing was theirs, even when the frame was built by someone else. And if you ignore that, if you push too openly, correct too aggressively, or try to dominate without subtlety, people stop listening to what benefits them and start defending what preserves their pride. That is where most people lose power without noticing it. They think persuasion is about being clearer, louder, firmer, more convincing. It is not. In high-stakes social dynamics, persuasion often fails because it feels like control, and once people feel controlled, they become irrational on purpose. They reject good advice. They delay obvious decisions. They sabotage outcomes that would help them, not because they are blind, but because the ego would rather lose than submit. That is why reverse psychology is dangerous and useful. Used recklessly, it turns you into a cheap manipulator. Used with precision, it becomes a way to bypass resistance, protect your position, and move around the defenses people build when they feel cornered. This is not childish mind games. This is not about tricking weak people for entertainment. This is about understanding the architecture of defiance. It is about knowing why direct pressure hardens opposition, why silence can redirect behavior better than argument, and why the strongest influence is often invisible. Weak people force. Strategic people frame. Weak people argue with resistance. Strategic people convert resistance into movement. Weak people need credit. Strategic people need results. In this video, you'll learn 13 Machiavellian laws of reverse psychology that operate beneath ordinary persuasion. You'll discover how to make people lean toward what they were prepared to reject. How to use ego, timing, silence, identity, and controlled indifference as leverage, and how to influence without looking needy, obvious, or emotionally invested. You'll understand when to step back, when to withhold, when to understate, and when to let the other person talk themselves into the very thing they were resisting. And one of the later laws is especially dangerous. Because once you understand it, you stop trying to win arguments and start building situations where the other person chooses your preferred outcome to protect their own self-image. Ride that again. That is where influence becomes serious. But hear this clearly. This is not about cruelty. It is not about humiliating people. It is not about treating every relationship like a battlefield. This is about control, perception, protection, and position. It is about defending yourself from stubborn egos, social friction, passive resistance, and covert power games. It is about learning how people actually move, not how they pretend to move. Because in real life, people do not obey logic consistently. They obey pride. They obey image. They obey the frame that lets them feel untouched. If you miss that, you will keep making the same mistake. You will keep pushing for honesty and getting defensiveness, pushing for closeness and getting distance, pushing for respect and getting silent sabotage. You will wonder why your arguments are good but your outcomes stay weak. The answer is simple. You are attacking the front door while the real mechanism is buried in the ego. That ends now. By the end of this video, you will stop trying to drag people into decisions they want to resist. You will learn how to let their own pride carry them where your pressure never could. You will stop over-signaling intent. You will stop begging for agreement. You will stop feeding resistance with obvious force. and you will become far more dangerous socially because your influence will stop looking like influence. If you're ready to stop pushing and start positioning, comment, "I influence from the frame." Number 1. Never attack freedom directly. The fastest way to trigger resistance is to make people feel their choice is being taken away. Psychologically, autonomy is protected like territory. The moment someone senses that you are trying to force a decision, even a good one, the conversation stops being about truth and becomes about control. Machiavelli understood that people forgive many things, but they rarely forgive feeling handled in public or cornered in private. This is why direct commands often create the exact opposite of the intended result. The ego hears pressure and immediately builds a wall. You see it when you tell a stubborn partner, friend, or employee, "You need to do this." Even if your advice is correct, their attention shifts from the quality of the idea to the fact that you delivered it as pressure. Most people push the decision. Powerful people protect the illusion of choice. The implication is simple. If they feel trapped, they resist. If they feel free, they consider. If they feel they arrived there themselves, they commit more deeply. Instead, reduce pressure. Phrase your position in a way that leaves room. Give them space to move without feeling conquered. Let the door stay open. The ego fights cages, not corridors. If you understand that, comment, "I never attack freedom directly." Number 2, use resistance as a map. When someone resists you, they are telling you where their ego is hiding. Resistance is not random. It reveals what a person needs to defend about themselves. Sometimes it is independence, sometimes competence, sometimes status, sometimes the fear of looking weak, wrong, or late. Reverse psychology becomes effective the moment you stop seeing resistance as an obstacle and start reading it as information. Machiavellian strategy is not about crushing opposition head-on. It is about identifying the emotional stake inside the opposition and turning it into leverage. Imagine you suggest a better way to do something at work, and a colleague instantly disagrees before even hearing the details. That is rarely about the idea alone. It is often about preserving the image of being the one who already knows. Most people fight the resistance. Powerful people study it. That changes everything. Resistance tells you what identity must be preserved. Once you know that, you stop arguing content and start adjusting the frame around pride. Instead, ask yourself what they are protecting. Then speak to that, not against it. Influence improves the moment you stop arguing with the surface. Every objection is an X-ray of the ego. If you see that clearly, comment, "I read resistance before I respond." Number 3, make the idea feel self-generated. People defend what they create far more than what they are handed. Ownership changes behavior. The same idea rejected as instruction is often embraced as self-discovery. That is because the human mind does not just want to be right. It wants to feel original, sovereign, and internally directed. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. If you need public credit for the idea, you weaken the chance of adoption. But if the other person feels they arrived there on their own, they protect the idea as if it were part of their identity. You see this in meetings all the time. You push a solution directly, and it gets questioned. Later, you ask a few precise questions, leave space, and someone arrives at the same conclusion. Suddenly the room accepts it. Most people want recognition. Powerful people want outcome control. The implication is sharp. If they own the conclusion, they defend it. If they feel it was imposed, they search for flaws. Influence rises when your fingerprints disappear. Instead, guide with questions, contrasts, and incomplete observations. Let them do the final step mentally. Let their mind close the distance. The strongest planted idea is the one they swear was theirs. If you can work like that, comment, "I let them think it was their idea." Number 4. Praise the identity they fear betraying. A well-placed identity statement can move behavior faster than an argument. People work hard to remain consistent with the image they admire in themselves. If someone sees themselves as disciplined, loyal, sharp, selective, independent, high standard, or impossible to fool, they will often act to preserve that identity even against their immediate impulse. Reverse psychology works here because you are not pushing behavior directly. You are activating self-protection around an identity. Machiavelli understood that reputation is not only public, it is internal. People are always performing for the audience inside their own head. Imagine a friend is about to make a reckless decision. Instead of saying, "Don't do that," you say, "You usually have more discipline than that." Now the behavior threatens their self-image. Most people argue against the action. Powerful people recruit identity against it. The strategic implication is precise. Attack the behavior and they defend it. Invoke the higher self-image and they often correct themselves. Pride can be steered. Instead, name the trait they do not want to betray. Say it calmly. Say it without over-explaining. Then step back. People obey the version of themselves they are trying not to lose. If that lands, comment, "I speak to identity, not impulse." Number 5. Withdraw the chase. Pursuit reduces your leverage when the other person enjoys being pursued. Some people do not resist because they disagree. They resist because your effort feeds their status. The more you chase, clarify, reassure, persuade, or overinvest, the more valuable they feel and the less urgency they feel to move. This applies in relationships, negotiations, office politics, and social circles. Reverse psychology enters when you understand that removing pressure can also remove the reward structure of resistance. Machiavelli knew that access is power, and badly managed access makes you cheap. You know the scenario. You keep texting first, following up, explaining your intent, trying to keep the dynamic alive. The other person gives delayed responses, low effort, and just enough engagement to keep you in motion. Most people increase effort. Powerful people reduce availability. The implication is cold. Some resistance is sustained by your pursuit. Once pursuit disappears, the dynamic changes. They feel the absence of what they were taking for granted. Instead, step back. Stop filling every silence. Stop rescuing low-energy interactions. Let your attention become selective, not automatic. When your presence is constant, it becomes wallpaper. When it is controlled, it becomes weight. If you understand that, comment, "I never chase what enjoys being chased." Number 6. Understate the challenge. Telling people they may not be ready can activate a stronger drive than telling them they should act. This law is volatile because it turns pride into motion. Many people are more motivated by the threat of being underestimated than by the promise of reward. If you openly push them, they resist the pressure. But if you calmly imply that the task, standard, or decision may not be for them, something shifts. Their ego wants to prove range. Their identity wants to reject limitation. Reverse psychology works here because you are not demanding action. You are presenting restraint and letting their pride attack it. Imagine you want a competitive friend to finally commit to a difficult project. Saying, "Come on, do it," may get you excuses. Saying, "Maybe this one just doesn't fit your style," hits differently. Most people motivate with pressure. Powerful people motivate with selective doubt. The strategic implication is dangerous. Use this on insecure people, and it can become reckless. Use it with precision, and it can break inertia instantly. You are steering pride, not reason. Instead, understate. Suggest that the path may require more patience, discipline, or stomach than they currently want. Then let silence do the rest. Nothing provokes hidden ambition like measured disbelief. If you see the force in that, comment. I know when to understate the challenge. Number 7, offer a smaller door to trigger a larger move. Sometimes the best way to make someone choose the bigger path is to present a safer, smaller alternative first. Human beings hate feeling strategically downsized, especially if they see themselves as bold, capable, or higher ranking than the option offered. If you present only the large ask, they may resist the pressure. But if you calmly offer the reduced version, the conservative route, or the easier role, their ego may reject it and step upward on its own. Machiavelli would understand this as positional framing. You are not commanding them upward. You are making the lower option feel inconsistent with the image they want to protect. Think of a negotiation where you want someone to take greater responsibility. If you say, I need you to lead this, they may hesitate. If you say, we can keep you in a lighter support role if that's more comfortable, now the frame changes. Most people ask for the big move directly. Powerful people make the smaller option feel too small. The implication is clean. Choice architecture shapes pride. Pride shapes action, and action follows the option that best preserves status. Instead, design the contrast carefully. Offer the reduced path without sarcasm. Let them reject it themselves. Let ambition do the lifting. The ego climbs faster when it feels it is escaping reduction. If you can use that responsibly, comment, I frame the smaller door. Number 8, plant doubt, not accusation. Direct accusations create defense. Controlled doubt creates self-interrogation. When you accuse someone outright, their mind mobilizes to protect itself. They gather excuses. They deny. They counterattack. But when you introduce a precise doubt without emotional noise, something subtler happens. The idea can remain inside them after the conversation ends. Machiavellian logic favors seeds over speeches. A seed does not need immediate agreement. It only needs placement. Once planted, the other person starts arguing with themselves in private, and private arguments are often more powerful than public ones. Imagine a friend being manipulated by someone obvious to everyone except them. If you say, that person is using you, they defend the relationship instantly. If you say, have you noticed how things only move when it benefits them? That lands differently. Most people force conclusions. Powerful people trigger reflection. The strategic implication is elegant. A forced thought gets rejected. A suggested doubt gets revisited. And what people revisit alone can change them deeply. Instead, use one clean observation. No lecture, no emotional flood, no desperate insistence. Then let distance and repetition inside their own mind do the work. A suspicion whispered at the right time can outlive 1,000 arguments. If you understand that mechanism, comment, I plant doubt with precision. Number 9, let silence finish the persuasion. Silence is where people often persuade themselves. Most people are terrified of pauses. They rush to fill them, soften them, explain them, rescue them. That destroys leverage. In reverse psychology, silence is not empty space. It is pressure without visible force. After a suggestion, a boundary, an understated challenge, or a quiet doubt, silence gives the other person room to hear their own internal reaction. Machiavelli understood timing better than most modern communicators. He knew that what follows a statement can matter more than the statement itself. You see this in negotiation. You state your number, or your boundary, or your position, and then the room goes quiet. The average person starts explaining. They lower their own value. They negotiate against themselves. Most people speak to reduce tension. Powerful people let tension reveal the truth. The implication is severe. If you fill the silence, you give away leverage. If you hold it, the other person often starts disclosing, correcting, softening, or selling themselves back to you. Instead, say less, then stop. Hold eye contact if present. Hold the line if distant. Let the pause become part of the message. The person who cannot survive silence cannot control the frame. If that truth is clear to you, comment, "I let silence finish the work." Number 10. Surrender the argument. Keep the frame. Sometimes the strongest reverse move is to stop fighting the point and let the weight of responsibility fall back on them. This is not weakness. It is strategic disengagement. When someone expects resistance and you refuse the obvious battle, you remove the arena where they plan to dominate. If the conversation is built for emotional collision, stepping out of the collision can force the other person to sit alone with the consequences of their choice. Machiavelli respected concession when concession exposed a deeper imbalance. Not every battle should be won in words. Some are won by making the other person own what they demanded. Imagine someone insisting on a bad plan while subtly daring you to oppose them. Instead of arguing endlessly, you say, "If that's the direction you're confident in, go ahead," calmly, cleanly. Now the shield of opposition is gone. The burden is theirs. Most people keep debating. Powerful people return responsibility. The strategic implication is sharp. Some people need your resistance to feel right. Remove it, and they lose friction, certainty, and often momentum. Without an enemy, their conviction weakens. Instead, surrender the argument without surrendering awareness. Let them feel the full weight of their own decision. Sometimes the trap is not losing the argument, it is winning it for them. If you know when to step back, comment, "I surrender the argument, not the frame." Number 11. Turn ego into a steering wheel. This is where reverse psychology becomes highly dangerous. People do not only want outcomes, they want status inside the outcome. They want to feel superior, rare, difficult to fool, hard to impress, or above the average crowd. Once you understand the exact ego currency a person trades in, you can steer behavior by aligning the desired action with their preferred self-image. Machiavelli would call this power through appetite. You are not dragging them. You are letting vanity pull them. Picture a client, colleague, or social rival who prides themselves on being selective and sharp. If you pressure them, they resist. But if you say, "This isn't for everyone," it usually only works with people who move decisively. You are not giving an order. You are presenting an identity gate. Most people appeal to logic. Powerful people appeal to status-coded identity. The implication is obvious and dangerous. Ego can move people faster than reason ever will. But if you use this carelessly, you create resentment, inflate delusion, or turn influence into manipulation that corrodes trust. Instead, use this only when you understand the cost. Speak to the ego quietly, never overdo it. The best trigger is subtle, not theatrical. Vanity is a door that opens from the inside. If you see why this law demands caution, comment, "I never underestimate ego." Number 12. Use controlled absence to reverse the pull. Not all influence comes from contact. Some of it comes from removal. When your presence is too available, too explainable, too responsive, people stop feeling your value and start assuming access. Controlled absence breaks that assumption. In reverse psychology, absence can force re-evaluation without one dramatic word. It is not ghosting for drama. It is strategic reduction of access when overexposure has made you easy to ignore. Machiavelli understood scarcity. What is always available rarely commands respect. What is measured, withheld, or difficult to read creates weight. Think about a team, friendship, or relationship where your effort became expected and your input became background noise. The more you gave, the less it registered. Then you reduce availability. You stop overserving. You stop showing up on automatic. Suddenly your absence becomes information. Most people try to be noticed through more presence. Powerful people become felt through selective absence. The strategic implication is strong. Removal changes perception. It exposes who valued you, who used you, and who only responded when your energy was no longer free. Instead, cut unnecessary access without theatrical announcements. Let the gap speak. Let people experience the cost of your reduced availability. Some people only understand your value when your silence occupies space you used to fill. If that resonates, comment. I use absence with control. Number 13. Never let the tactic become visible. The moment reverse psychology looks like manipulation, its power collapses and your position weakens. This is the final law because it separates strategy from amateurism. If your influence is obvious, people feel played. Once people feel played, even if the outcome helped them, trust erodes, resistance hardens, and your long-term leverage drops. Machiavelli valued hidden architecture. He knew that visible control invites rebellion. Reverse psychology only works when it feels organic, proportionate, and psychologically clean. The minute it starts feeling theatrical, repetitive, or smug, you stop looking strategic and start looking desperate. You see this when someone constantly says the opposite of what they want, hoping others will do the reverse. After a while, the pattern becomes obvious. Then nobody respects it. They just see manipulation with poor camouflage. Most people overuse a tactic once it works. Powerful people protect invisibility. The implication is final. Influence must remain light. If the mechanism is seen, the mechanism dies. If the pattern is repeated too often, people adapt and your frame collapses. Instead, use reverse psychology rarely, precisely, and only where direct pressure would create worse resistance. Keep it elegant. Keep it restrained. Keep your fingerprints off the outcome. The best manipulation defense is also the rule of wise influence. If it feels obvious, it is already too loud. If you understand the final law, comment. I protect the invisibility of influence. Now step back and look at what changed. You started this video thinking reverse psychology was just saying the opposite of what you want. That is the childish version. The real version is deeper and far more strategic. It is about understanding that people do not move only by logic. They move by ego, identity, autonomy, status, timing, perception, and the need to feel internally unconquered. Once you understand that, your approach changes. You stop trying to break resistance with force. You start designing frames where resistance carries the person toward the outcome on its own. That is real leverage. You don't need to force every decision. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to explain your intention at every step. What you need is cleaner timing, sharper observation, better control of access, and the discipline to stop pushing when pushing would only feed the other person's defenses. Reverse psychology is not about constant manipulation. It is about understanding where the ego hardens and how not to crash into it. It is about making room for people to move without feeling dominated. It is about creating conditions where the mind chooses what pressure would have made it reject. And that is why this must be used with caution. Used carelessly, it turns relationships into games, influence into vanity, and strategy into poison. Used strategically, it protects your position, preserves your power, and helps you move through difficult people without unnecessary collision. Machiavelli would respect the person who can influence without exposing hunger, redirect resistance without visible strain, and leave others feeling self-directed even while the frame was quietly shaped. That is the identity shift. You become harder to resist because you stop provoking resistance. You become harder to read because your intent is no longer noisy. You become harder to control because you no longer need immediate compliance to feel powerful. You stop chasing outcomes with your hands. You start shaping them with your frame. If this video shifted something in you, hit like so. More people see what direct pressure keeps hiding from them. Subscribe if you want deeper psychological strategy, sharper social awareness, and more content on silence, leverage, control, perception, and unreadable presence. Share this with someone who still argues too directly, over-explains, chases agreement, or keeps triggering resistance without understanding why. And remember, the most effective influence rarely feels like force. It feels like freedom moving exactly where you wanted it to go.